Hey there, welcome into Fantasy Baseball today on Tuesday, March 12th. I am Frank Stanfield, joined by Scott White and Chris Towers. Today on the show, we've got ourselves a little strategy talk, how to draft from each slot. So picks 1 through 4, 5 through 8, and 9 through 12. We'll talk about how we look to construct our teams through the first 3 rounds of drafts. And many people have asked for a segment or an exercise similar to this, so we will do it a little bit later on. Plus, more injuries, this time to my beloved New York Yankees. Let me set the stage and build the drama for everybody. I had a late night Sunday night. We did the podcast. I had to edit it. I had to write Sleepers 2.0. Entirely my fault for leaving it to the last minute. So I slept in on Monday, and I woke up not only to news that Aaron Judge is, quote, mid-spring beat up, but that Gerrit Cole will undergo an MRI on his right elbow. And so that is where we will start today's show. Gerrit Cole, again, an MRI on the right elbow. He's been having difficulty bouncing back from his throwing this spring. We didn't get a prognosis for Cole as of Monday night.
And I saw one report. We probably won't get one on Tuesday either.
Probably not going to get one on Tuesday. That's right. Apparently, he's slated for multiple opinions regarding the course of treatment. Cole is, of course, coming off his first Cy Young Award and has thrown the most innings in baseball since 2017. He's currently a borderline first-round pick in ADP, the SP2 off the board behind Spencer Strider. This might be an impossible question to answer, but Scott, we'll start with you. Also, I'm sorry. I know you have him on your Tout Wars team, Scott, so there's a lot going on.
Yeah, I kind of built the whole Tout Wars team around him. Yeah, that's...
I'm sorry.
I already didn't like that team's chances of winning the whole thing. But, okay, maybe. Okay,
what's okay. You got no LV Marte.
Yeah.
Let's get into the actual question, I guess. For anyone drafting over the next couple of days, Scott, what do you do with Gerrit Cole?
Push back your draft. That's the best answer, because like this is too critical of a player. I mean, the second best pitcher by most everybody's rankings. Some might have had him number 1, and his value is totally up in the air for the next couple. Like it's totally arbitrary where I say you should draft him in the next couple days before we find out what the actual diagnosis is for the elbow. So if it's at all possible, I think you should just push it back. If it isn't possible, I would not draft Gerrit Cole until round 6 is what I would say. And I think the deeper your league is, you push him down further from there. And I'm not saying I absolutely would draft him if he's in round 6. That's the first point where I'd think about drafting him, and I'd weigh what else is there and what I already have. And he could be a huge value in round 6, or he could be a total waste to pick in round 6. But that seems like about the breaking point, because that's where you start to see like Grayson Rodriguez and Yuri Perez. So you already get into some pitchers with downside risk. And so that's why I chose that part of the rankings to start thinking about Gerrit Cole. I probably what would happen is everybody, I don't know, Chris, you actually did a draft tonight. Where did he end up going?
Yeah, I did the FSGA Champions League, and he was the 67th pick. And now I had initially, what's that?
It's round 6.
It was round 5. It's a 14-team league, so it was round 5 technically. But yeah, round 6 and a 12-team. My initial thought when I wrote about it this afternoon was to move him down to like 35th. And then I was picking on the end, and I got Jose Ramirez and Matt Olson in the first and second round. It got back to me at, 42nd overall. Yeah. And Gerrit Cole was the clear top player on my rankings, and I took Pablo Lopez and Tarek Skubal. I couldn't bring myself to it. Now, when he was coming back to me in the 5th round, and I saw him, I did add him to my queue. And I did think if he was there, I would have had to make a very, very tough decision on taking him. That would have been 70th overall. I think I would have done it if he was there, even though it would have meant 3 straight starting pitchers in rounds 3, 4, and 5. It would have meant no outfielder in my first 5 picks, but the upside there, like,
yeah. I mean, it's like getting Ronald Acuna for $40 in an NL only league.
Yeah.
Scary stretch
45.
Now,
41.
No, he went for 40.
I am more concerned about the Cole situation. I was always pretty optimistic about Acuna's situation, just all the different details we were hearing about it. And we are hearing details with Cole's situation that are encouraging, not quite as conclusive in my mind as what we were hearing about Acuna, but like, just the general sentiment within the Yankees is that it's more of a precautionary. I thought I silenced that. It was more of like a precautionary thing, and they've done like strength testing with him, and that's all come out fine. His velocity and location have been great this spring. He's bouncing back in his own, the way he describes it. He's bouncing back more like he's throwing 100 pitches rather than the 45, 50 he's throwing. And so, it might be a very minor thing. It might be shut him down for a week and still ready for opening day. And immediately we're back to drafting him at the round 1-2 turn. And of course there's a mid outcome here, mid-level outcome where he's,
the Kyle Bradish outcome, let's call it.
Yeah. That's on the worst end even. Like it could be something even more minor than that, but sidelines Gerrit Cole for the first month of the season. And so he's on like the Kodai Senga timeline at that point. And then I think round 6, that is probably the appropriate place to draft him, even after the news comes out. But there is, of course, the ultimate downside case where he's having some kind of season ending procedure, or what might be even worse is if, torn UCL, but he's going to try to rehabilitate it, and we don't know if he's going to be able to do it.
I mean, if there's a UCL tear, then you're not talking about a top 200 pick, even if he tries to pitch through it, right?
Well, Bradish technically has a UCL tear, right? So
but Bradish is certainly not going inside the top 200.
No, he's not. He's not. Cole would go ahead of it. It just depends on the extent of it. I mean, the Orioles sound particularly optimistic about Kyle Bradish's UCL issue, and it is worth noting. I mean, there are more pitchers than we probably even know about pitching with some degree of UCL damage. Nobody ever talks about Zach Gallen.
Yeah.
Nobody ever talks about Zach Gallen, who had this issue in 2021, I believe it was. And I thought going into 2022, okay, clearly this guy's destined for Tommy John surgery. It hasn't happened. He's pitched like an ace for the most part since then. So it's not, just because those letters are mentioned, if they are mentioned for the Cole diagnosis, it's not immediately a doomsday sort of thing.
For the record, Bradish and Kodai Senga both went around 240 in my draft tonight. So I think 200-ish if Cole was on a similar timetable.
Looking at NFBC ADP in the month of March, Kodai Senga is the 206th player off the board on average, and Kyle Bradish is 333. There's no IL spots in the NFBC, so obviously that factors in as well. So,
I mean, the Senga timeline is late April, early May. If Cole is projected late April, early May, let's say it's not so much a Bradish UCL issue, it's something else, elbow inflammation or whatever.
Maybe it's 150.
No, I would still think top 100.
I was going to say
like round 6 range. That's where it would feel appropriate to me.
I think half of where Senga's going. If we know that Cole is going to miss a month, and it is confirmed that it's something to do with the UCL, because obviously that there is still a lot of risk that something can pop back up with that. I would think it's around 100, but again, we're talking in ifs right now, and there's lots of different scenarios that can play out here. So really, we're just kind of in wait and see mode with Gerrit Cole. But obviously, this is pretty scary stuff. Anytime a pitcher is going for an MRI on his pitching elbow, what happens with the Yankees next, right? If this is a long-term injury for Gerrit Cole, my guess is they're probably going to be in touch with Blake Snell, who they've been in touch with throughout the course of this offseason. So maybe something happens there. If not Snell, if they look to just kind of fill from within, this is not a good situation because they traded away a lot of pitching depth to acquire both Alex Verdugo and Juan Soto this offseason. So if they fill it from within, one of Luke Weaver, that's right, Clayton Beeter, Luis Heel, Will Warren, those are the names.
Hey, man. Luis Heel looked ridiculous today.
He did.
I don't know if you saw. He had 15 swings and misses on 49 pitches. Luis Gil's probably not very good in spite of that. But
he was a former top pitching prospect.
He was, well, top pitching prospect.
Top pitch.
Like, how did I miss that? Okay, Gil is Gil. You pronounce it Gil, apparently. Okay, I did see. I said the name in my head, Gil, and so
Luis Gil.
Gil.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. He did have a huge performance.
They would have to sign someone, right? Like,
you can't wait a year of Juan Soto.
There's no way you gave up all that for Juan Soto. You've got Aaron Judge. Like, there's just, I can't see any way they go into the season with Carlos Rodon and Nestor Cortez as their top 2 starting pitchers. It's a totally unviable strategy for a team that went all in for Juan Soto.
And we still don't know exactly what we're going to get from Carlos Rodon either, because he's been pretty rocky so far this spring as well. So
but like, here's another thing to bring up. When do you actually, if Snell signs tomorrow, when do you actually expect him to throw his first pitch in a regular season game? Because I don't think it'd be the first turn through.
Yeah, I think it'd probably be a couple weeks in, 10 days in, probably.
Maybe the second week of the season, yeah.
So that's halfway to the Kodai Senga timeline. And I know there's a possibility Senga suffers a setback. But you're halfway to that timeline. Can't stash Snell on the IL in the meantime. I don't know if they could come up with some way they could get away with putting him on the IL. I don't know. But presumably not.
Mm-hmm.
How much should we be moving down Blake Snell? And I moved him down a couple weeks ago, but I probably am overdue for moving him down again. And I guess Jordan Montgomery, same thing.
Yeah, I mean, Snell was still top 20 starting pitcher for me. He probably needs to move down more than that, though.
Where did he end up going in that 14-teamer tonight?
Snell went with the second pick of the 6th round. So that is 72nd overall.
Pretty high. I got him around 90th, I think, at TGFBI a couple weeks ago.
I think 90th is a much more palatable price.
Right. I was thrilled to get him at that point in time 2 weeks ago, but now I think that's about where I want to move Snell to, which, let's see, among starting pitchers.
Yeah, I'm going to move him right in front of Dylan Cease, who I feel like is a very similar pitcher anyway.
That by ADP, that puts him in like the Justin Steele, Joe Ryan, Cole Reagans. I don't know. I've never seen Cole Reagans go that late, but apparently by overall ADP on Fantasy Pros, and we talked yesterday about how Cole Reagans is going earlier recently, but it's ADP
89th in this draft.
Oh gosh, did you get him?
No, I was.
Why not?
I was on the other end. I would have had to take him 71st.
Yeah, it's a big difference.
Yep. So again, we're in wait and see mode with Gerrit Cole, who is getting an MRI done on his right elbow. Real quick on Aaron Judge. He's in, again, mid-spring beat up right now. All right, whatever that means. Not expected to return until Wednesday. The Yankees didn't reveal what Judge is dealing with, but we heard earlier this spring that Judge's right big toe will require, quote, constant maintenance for the remainder of his career. This is pure speculation on my part. I don't know if that's what it is.
Brian Hawk, the Yankees beat reporter for MLB.com, specified that his toe has not been an issue, that's not what it is. He's just,
I mean, the good news is the spring workload is way more difficult than the June workload, right? Right?
Chris, have you moved Judge down at all?
So I was picking 14th in this draft, and I was really worried that I was going to have to make the Judge decision because I've had him as a top 10 player. I've drafted him a ton. He's on my AL Labor team, and I was really worried that I was going to have to make that call. And luckily, someone took him 2 spots ahead of me, so I didn't have to make the call because I don't know what I would have decided if Aaron Judge was there, but I am going to move him down to the Yordan Alvarez tier. So it's like 5 spots in my rankings overall. It's $1 in auction value. So I don't want to overreact, but yeah, I think.
But that matters. I mean, that's the difference between
for sure.
a late first and an early second round pick.
Yeah, I don't think I could take him in the first round right now.
Scott, same with you. Judge, any concern?
I mean, I'm not, I don't know. I'm not reading that much into this. I think every player goes through period of soreness in the middle of spring training as they're getting back into game shape. And it doesn't sound like that big of a deal. I was already not thrilled to take Judge with a late first round pick, but I'm not like more likely to avoid him based on this news.
I think for me, it's just that the gap between him and Yordan Alvarez and Jose Ramirez and Shohei Ohtani is small enough that it's kind of looking for a reason to move him down.
I'd still take Judge over Yordan Alvarez. I think the injury concerns are similar. But I mean, Judge more recently showed us he could stay healthy for a full season. Yordan Alvarez never has.
Mm-hmm. And I think just the upside in general, right? Like we've seen higher upside seasons from Aaron Judge than we have from Yordan Alvarez as well. So I think that's
the upside. I think is comparable, but yeah, in terms of actual stats on the page, Alvarez hasn't had a season like Judge's 2022.
And one thing I do want to go back to with Gerrit Cole just for a second, because I've seen some like, should this move Spencer Strider up talk? And I've also seen like a lot of hype about this curveball. He got a couple of strikeouts with it today. It looks like a pretty good pitch. I just don't think there's anywhere Spencer Strider can go. Like, yeah. I think he's in a tier of his own now, whereas I think it was a tier of 2 before. But I'm not looking to move Spencer Strider up at all with Gerrit Cole going down.
I could see if like, yeah, I mean, in my rankings, I'm not going to, but if you were somebody who like, I want to get one of those top pitchers. Now you only have one choice.
Yeah.
Depending on how this goes with Cole. Like I said, he could be shut. It may be a shutdown, shut him down for a week and still be ready for opening day, in which case I don't think his value changes much either.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's quickly promote a few things. Make sure to subscribe to the FBT newsletter if you haven't already, cbssports.com/newsletters. You click on that FBT logo, punch in your email address. It's easy as that. It's free. Chris sends it out every day, puts a lot of work in, so make sure to sign up. So you can scan the QR code if you're watching on YouTube. That will take you right to the website as well. We have a live head-to-head categories mock draft tonight when you're listening to this, Tuesday, March 12th at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on our YouTube channel. Come hang out and subscribe, youtube.com/fantasybaseball today. It will also be a 2-part audio podcast. So even if you don't watch on YouTube, you will still get it some way, somehow. And a quick reminder here that we would like to extend a warm welcome to the newest podcast in our CBS Sports family. It's that time of year where everybody is craving hoops, but maybe not just on the college level. Beyond the Arc is a brand new show featuring daily NBA discussions with hosts John Gonzalez, Bill Ryder, and Ashley Nicole Moss, as well as regular appearances from NBA champion Avery Johnson. Download and follow Beyond the Arc wherever you find this podcast. Let's take our first break. And when we return, we'll get to the other news and notes. We'll do that right after this.
It's time for the madness.
And CBS Sports HQ has your wall-to-wall NCAA tournament coverage. We got your game highlights, expert analysis, and insights all the way to the Final Four. Start and end your March Madness coverage with CBS Sports HQ.
Welcome back in Fantasy Baseball today. The other news and notes outside of the Yankees, of course. Lucas Giolito will undergo surgery on Tuesday to repair UCL damage in his right elbow and will miss the entire 2024 season. The Red Sox updated rotation features Brian Bayo, Nick Pivetta, Cutter Crawford, Tanner Houck, and Garrett Whitlock. They have been linked to Jordan Montgomery, but nothing has happened as of now. I didn't know if you guys have any interest in those Red Sox guys. I feel like we've talked about them, though.
I think Crawford, Houck, and Whitlock are all pretty interesting. I'd probably go Crawford, Whitlock, Houck in terms of the interest level I have in them. But I think all three of them are viable sleepers. And, you know, Crawford, I think at this point is probably being drafted high enough that he, you know, goes inside or near the top 200 in a lot of leagues right now. So I don't know how much of a sleeper he is. He's probably someone you just have to draft as a starter. But Whitlock and Houck, I think, can still both be had in the reserve rounds in most drafts. So I think they're fine rolls of the dice.
Rays top prospect Junior Caminero was optioned to minor league camp on Monday. The 20-year-old will start at AAA, and we figured this was the case.
What they do.
Caminero's ADP is 224.4. Scott, when do you think we see Caminero back up with Tampa Bay?
I think pretty early. He's already used some. He's already gotten some at bats from last year, so it's not like save him until September. They could still technically do that and then have him on opening day roster next year, have him going for draft picks, but there's less room to operate there since he's already gotten some time on the big league roster, and I doubt they'd keep him down all year. I think once attrition kicks in, or maybe the Isaac Paredes bust scenario comes to pass, and his extreme pull fly ball tendencies don't play as well this year, not much for him to fall back on. I've made that case before. Then that would clear a path for Caminero, but there's also Curtis Mead and Jonathan Aranda. I think Aranda pretty much has a spot with the DH is mostly what he'll play. So I don't think he's preventing Caminero from debuting too much, but Curtis Mead is older and he has time in the majors too. And I don't know which of those would be first in line if there was an injury.
Yeah, I went and looked back at their top prospects over the last 5 years. Shane McClanahan is the only one who made it to the majors without spending significant amount of time at AAA. This is just what the Rays do. And McClanahan would have been at AAA if not for the pandemic season. So they are probably the least aggressive team in baseball when it comes to promoting their top prospects. We've seen it for Mead and Kyle Manzardo and Jonathan Aranda and all these guys over the last year or so. So it's just what the Rays do. I would expect at least a month down there.
All right. Ronald Acuna took live batting practice again on Monday. Manager Brian Snitker said Acuna's right knee feels fine, and the club is just waiting for the medical staff to clear him to return. Corey Seager took some light swings on Monday, the first time since he underwent sports hernia surgery back in January. We're still waiting to find out what his status will be for opening day. Sonny Gray completed a 20-pitch light bullpen session Monday with no issues and is slated for a longer bullpen on Wednesday or Thursday. Josh Young is expected to play in the team's final 2 exhibition games, March 25th and 26th. He's been slowed by a left calf strain he suffered back in February. Chris, I know that you've kind of been aggressive on drafting Josh Young. If he doesn't play any other spring games besides March 25th and 26th, do you think that he will be okay to play on opening day?
I don't know. I guess the thing I would look back at is what happened when he came back from that thumb injury last season. Obviously, it was a different situation because that was mid-season. It was in September, so I don't know if he got any minor league appearances, and I'm trying to filibuster while I look it up. It looks like he did not do a rehab assignment last year. I think Corey Seager did not do a rehab assignment when he missed a month or so early last season, so the Rangers seem willing to let guys return without a ton of warm-up. Given that it happened during spring training and he hasn't played any games yet, maybe their view will be different this time, but it wouldn't shock me if Josh Young just was on the opening day roster after a couple games.
All right. Cedric Mullins, who tweaked his right hamstring last week, expects to return to Grapefruit League play on Thursday. Edward Cabrera will undergo an MRI on his injured right shoulder, and if he lands on the IL, one of Max Meyer or Ryan Weathers will step into the Marlins rotation. AJ Smith-Shawver was optioned to AAA on Monday. As expected, the Braves' 5th starter job comes down to Ronaldo Lopez versus Bryce Elder. Alex Cobb could make his Cactus League debut as soon as Saturday. He underwent left hip surgery back in October. Got any interest in stashing Alex Cobb in leagues where, I don't know, you have 3 or more IL spots, let's say?
He'd be pretty far down the list among injured players I'd want to stash. So, I don't know. It'd have to be a league where you go pretty deep into the pitching pool.
I would imagine Lance McCullers is even further down that list. He underwent surgery to repair the flexor tendon in his right elbow and remove a bone spur last year. He said he's aiming to make his season debut in late June, early July. The guy
heard that one before.
He has talent, but has not been able to stay healthy. I assume McCullers is behind Cobb, right? Priority-wise?
Yeah.
Okay. The pitchers appear to be set for the Dodgers-Padres 2-game series in Korea. We'll get Tyler Glasnow versus Yu Darvish in Game 1 and Yoshinobu Yamamoto versus Joe Musgrove in Game 2.
And that will be how they open the domestic schedule as well. I think Dave Roberts said that today. So those guys will get an extra start for as long as Tyler Glasnow's able to stay healthy.
So if your league is a head-to-head league that includes the Korea series, and I know
you get a triple start for those guys.
Yeah, you got a couple 3-star pitchers here for that first scoring period.
How are you handling that, Scott, in head-to-head leagues? Because my assumption all along was those 2 games obviously count in a Roto league, but in head-to-head, it kind of feels awkward to start the scoring matchup that early and then kind of pick it up again the next week. I don't know.
Most leagues aren't even going to draft until after the Korea series, so that'll decide it. And ones that already have drafted or have their drafts still to come before the Korea series, Roto leagues, there's no reason not to count it because you get a chance to set your lineup again. Head-to-head leagues, okay, those the 2-game series, Padres-Dodgers, that's not going to be its own matchup for head-to-head leagues. Obviously, you could either include it with the short Thursday through Sunday, March 28th through April whatever, March 31st, I guess. You could either include it with them as a shorter scoring period, or you could include it, that Thursday through Sunday with the first full Monday through Friday, and then those 2 games in Korea into one long 19-day scoring period. The problem with if you're going to in either of those scenarios is that week between the Korea series and the full opening day, those lineups will be locked. And so you either have to just live with whatever changes happen in that week, or you have to be a super proactive commissioner who's going to go in and manually make tweaks to people's lineups as they request them. So I imagine most head-to-head leagues are not going to count the Padres-Dodgers series because it's just a lot of issues come up with that. In the 2 that are nearest and dearest to me, I am going to count them and just be a proactive commissioner. But I think that's the only way you can get away with doing it. Otherwise, you may have riots on your hands.
You could set it so that players don't lock until their games start, and that way only Padres and Dodgers would be locked. Which is how a lot of my leagues work.
I guess you could do that, though. Even in that scenario, rosters lock, so you couldn't. So any ad drops you make during that time wouldn't take effect to then be adjusted in your lineup.
Yeah, it does get a little bit messy, but I would agree with that. I think head-to-head leagues, you started on the normal domestic opening day, and then Roto leagues, obviously, you're counting every game anyway, so you would include those Dodgers and Padres games in Korea. Some quick spring training standouts from Monday. Spencer Strider, we mentioned 5 shutout innings with 9 strikeouts. His spring ERA is 0. His whip is .93. He has 22 strikeouts over 14 innings. It looks awesome. Zach Wheeler threw 3 no-hit innings. He used a new splitter 5 times of his 47 pitches. So could be another weapon there for Zach Wheeler this season. Tristan McKenzie threw 3 shutout innings with 4 strikeouts. He's made 2 starts this spring and has thrown 5 shutout innings total with 6 strikeouts. There's talent there. It's just, can Tristan McKenzie stay on the field? And that remains to be seen. Joe Boyle threw 3 innings, 1 hit, 1 run, 5 walks, 2 strikeouts. He now has 8 walks over his last 2 starts. This is kind of part of the downside, right, Scott?
Yeah.
Boyle.
Yeah. I don't know if all my enthusiasm for him is going to die before opening day even happens. If he's gonna walk 5 in 3 innings, that's more like who we saw in the minors, obviously. And he's allowed to have a single start like that in spring training. But if it continues the rest of the way, he might not win the job, first of all. And I would not, my hopes for him in fantasy would diminish, of course, because that's just too much downside risk for the whip and for everything else. Love the strikeout potential, though. Great stuff, Joe Boyle.
Chris, your new Stallions looked pretty good here on Monday. Trevor Rogers, 3 shutout innings with 5 strikeouts to 0 walks. Max Meyer threw also 3 shutout with 2 strikeouts to 1 walk. We haven't talked much about Trevor Rogers. Obviously, he had that breakout season a couple of years ago. Has dealt with like injuries and off-field stuff since then. And it just hasn't worked out. Max Meyer, all the potential in the world, returning from Tommy John that he had, I think, like 17 or 18 months ago. So should be fully ready to go. Any late round interest in Rogers and or Meyer?
I think they're both interesting. Rogers more so than Meyer, just because I think he's more likely to be in the rotation. I kind of think the Marlins should just stick Max Meyer in the bullpen this season, but it does not sound like that's something that they're all that interested in doing. Whatever. I don't know. I would think that they would want to avoid another Yuri Perez situation where they have to do something weird in the middle of the season to manage his innings. But I still think Trevor Rogers is more likely to be in the rotation for the Marlins than Max Meyer. At this point, I think it's probably pretty likely that Rogers is in the rotation. And you know what really grinds my gears? There is Baseball Savant StatCast data for every pitcher who pitched in that game tonight, except for Trevor Rogers. I don't know. They do not. He got 8 whiffs on 45 pitches. That's pretty good. But they do not have the velocity breakdown. He did not pitch in front of the StatCast data cameras in his first spring start. So I don't know what the velocity looks like. I've read reports that it's been pretty good, like hitting 94, 95, but don't have much more to go on than that. But yeah, I think Rogers was decent last year. I think his injury was not to his throwing arm, if I'm remembering correctly. I want to say it was like a right shoulder injury. I think
you're right, but it was like
it just lasted it just never went away.
Yeah. So I was worried, and I wrote about it in my latest spring training roundup that came out Monday, about whether Trevor Rogers would be able to build up in time, because this here on Monday was only his second spring start.
He got 45 pitches.
Yeah, he probably can. Ryan Weathers has looked so good.
Yes.
That I'd hate for him to get left out. And Edward Cabrera may be fine, or if he's not, I imagine Ryan Weathers would have priority over Max Meyer for Edward Cabrera's spot if we're assuming Rogers is in. But it's not a given, obviously. And look, Ryan Weathers has been pretty awful in the majors to this point, but he seems to be throwing harder. He's throwing more strikes this spring. Pitching breakouts sometimes come from the most unexpected places, and Weathers has looked really good.
Rogers' injury was to his left biceps, by the way.
Yes. Yeah, I was going to mention that with him. And, Chris, you brought up that the pitch data was unknown on the Baseball Savant for Trevor Rogers. I did look into that game. As soon as I saw it was unknown, I didn't look at any of the other pitchers.
Yeah, I think Trevor McGill, there was something going on in the early innings because Trevor McGill has incomplete data as well.
But at least
some of his. Yeah, his stuff is, so it must have been like just the first 4 innings or whatever. So that's frustrating. I'm very frustrated. By the way, MLB treats spring training and the pitch data that they have. We don't have to get into it, but it's just like they're penny pinching for no reason. Give us this data. You have it available. It shouldn't be this hard.
I mean, it's for an obvious reason, Chris. This is what they've always done. So, Max Meyer, by the way, averaged 93.9 miles per hour on his fastball in this outing. He averaged 94.8 back in 2022 when we last saw Max Meyer. A couple other standouts. Edwin Diaz made his spring debut. He struck out the side. He looked like
awesome. 7 whiffs on 14 pitches.
He's awesome. Big day for Jackson Merrill, who went 3 for 4 with his first spring homer. He's now 11 for 32 with 1 homer and 1 steal.
He's making the roster.
I think he's probably going to be up on opening day. And Wyatt Langford went 2 for 3 with a double, a walk, and 4 runs scored. He leads all of spring training with a 1,300 OPS. I think he's going to be up on opening day. But
and every game he has like this, it makes it harder to say otherwise. I still don't. It still bothers me that they won't be able to play him in the outfield that much. And it has to bother them too.
I think that I hear what you're saying, Scott. I think he probably will DH more than anything else, but they can kind of give guys half days off, right?
They can.
Give Adolis Garcia a day, put him at DH one day, put Evan Carter at DH one day.
Ezekiel Duran can play shortstop while, Seager's less than 100%. Like, I think there are ways to do it.
There are ways to do it. It would, if I am in charge of the Rangers, it would bother me.
Yep.
So I'm trying to look at it from that perspective. But yeah, I mean, I'd give him, I don't know. I guess I guess I'm up to like 65% on Langford making the Rangers opening day roster. So
75, Scott, 75.
I'd put Jackson Chorio at like 90 to 95. I'd put Jackson Holiday at like 80 to 85. Let's put Jackson Merrill. I always want to say his name backwards. Jackson Merrill at 75 and Wyatt Langford at 65. That's where I am. Their chances of making the opening day roster.
All right, let's take our final break. When we return, how to draft from each part of the first round. Picks 1 to 4, 5 to 8, and 9 to 12. We'll do that right after this.
And the crowd goes crazy.
Welcome back in. How to draft from each part of the first round. This is assuming a 12-team league. And I realize this is not a perfect exercise because it is impossible to predict who will be available. But many people have requested that we do something like this, and we've done it in previous years. So let's start with a top 4 pick, and we will do this from both a Roto and a head-to-head points perspective. We will start with the Roto category side of things. Both of you have Ronald Acuna, Bobby Witt, Julio Rodriguez, and Corbin Carroll in your top 4 in some order.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a top 4 pick, you're taking one of those guys. You're hoping to get 30-plus steals from Julio, 40-plus steals from the other 3. No questions there, right? Pretty simple.
No, I mean, I think this exercise kind of falls apart just because Ronald Acuna is such an outlier that I think you approach your draft very differently depending on first versus second versus third. I think there's a lot more similarities between the value of the second pick and the 8th pick right now than the first and second. But yeah, you're picking one of those stolen base guys, it gives you such an edge.
I feel like there are so many priorities that need to be met with an early round hitter. These days, I'm emphasizing runs and RBI a lot more than I have in the past. And so, being in a good lineup, playing every day, that counts for a lot with me. And also batting average. Batting average was something that was always important to fill. I think stolen bases may be less important than those to fill in the early rounds now, but it's still such an awesome advantage if you can get all that and stolen bases, like a potential league leading number of stolen bases that those 4 hitters provide, especially Acuna, Witt, and Carroll. That I think, to me, it's really hard to make an argument for anyone else within the top 4. I mean, just look at the other first round caliber hitters. There are a couple that provide you steals, but most of them don't. And so they give you all the other stuff you're looking for in a round 1 type hitter. And so that's where they should go. But to be able to get a huge number of stolen bases on top of that is such a big advantage, I feel like.
And I've been on record, anyone who's listening this offseason, I have Corbin Carroll a little bit lower. If I had the 4th overall pick in a categories league, I would take Mookie Betts. I realize that I am sacrificing steals, but I do think there's a little bit more risk with Corbin Carroll's shoulder versus the high floor, the production we've seen from Mookie Betts over the past couple of years. Coming back in the second round, picks 21 through 24, top names available according to Fantasy Pros ADP. You've got Austin Riley, Ozzie Albies, Zach Wheeler, Marcus Semien, Pete Alonso, Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and Francisco Lindor. So there are different ways that you can build this out. You got a bunch of speed in the first round with one of your, wherever you drafted 1 to 4. You can either look for power with someone like a Riley or a Pete Alonso. You can get a more well-rounded player like an Albies or a Francisco Lindor. How would you guys look to attack that part of the draft? Or you could take a pitcher. So,
yeah, I'm probably taking a pitcher with one of the second or third round picks here, especially if I took Acuna. I think Acuna's starting pitcher is actually a really viable strategy this season. I think probably less so because it would have been like Gausman and Wheeler more often than not. And now it's probably Wheeler and Pablo or Wheeler and...
You might be able to pull off Wheeler and Castillo, Chris.
Yeah, Wheeler and Castillo. That's the name I was thinking of. So I think it's still viable, but I would have felt better about it before Gausman's shoulder fatigue. But
yeah, I mean, that's the way to take advantage of all those advantages that Acuna gives you, like across the board. If you want, he puts you so far ahead in every hitting category. I'm generally not crazy about drafting a pitcher that early this year, but I think taking Acuna is the one time, the time it makes the most sense. Just like, okay, you're giving yourself the best chance to dominate in everything. You've already got all the hitting. You're already off to such a great start with the hitting categories. Go ahead and fill some pitching categories with at least one of them. I think in a 12-team league, I'd be unlikely to take 2, especially since Gausman's status is up in the air now. But in a 15-teamer where those early starting pitchers deplete so quickly, then it's more justifiable. As for the other players, look, I think if Francisco Lindor is there, probably not pairing him with Bobby Witt. But for either of the outfielders to get a potential 30-30 man at what in my mind is the second weakest position, distant second, but the second weakest, and obviously there's no outfielders worth taking here. I think if Lindor's there, I'm just automatically taking him and not considering the other hitters over him. If it is Witt, then I'd probably opt for like is Austin Riley? Was he one of the ones?
He might make it. Yeah, there's a chance.
I mean, it's less about it's more just which hitter do I like the most than goes with this guy, because those first 4 hitters, Acuna does everything even better than the rest, but they all basically do the same things well, and 3 of them are outfielders. So it's just, I rank Riley higher than I rank Albies, and I rank Albies higher than Alonso. I'm not even sure of that, who I rank higher between Alonso and Albies, but it would be mostly about which hitter I liked most.
In the early 3rd round, you mentioned, you could potentially go double dip with the starting pitchers if you take a Ronald Acuna. A lot of the same names that we just mentioned, Albies could still be there, Zach Wheeler, Marcus Semien, Pete Alonso. There are other names that become available. Vlad Jr., Corey Seager, Luis Castillo, Gunnar Henderson, Jose Altuve is a name that we often gravitate towards. Ellie De La Cruz, there's a lot of people out there that would take him in the early 3rd round. I'm not sure that any of us would, but let's say that you started with Julio Rodriguez and Francisco Lindor, or even Austin Riley for that case. You started with 2 hitters. Would you be looking to take a pitcher in the early 3rd in a categories league, or would you look to take another hitter and just keep adding up those stats?
Yeah, this is where it gets tough, because I like the hitters more than the pitchers here. But what's pitcher going to look like when it gets back to you? You're counting on like Tarek Skubal making it back to you in round 4, or let's see, who would be another one.
So late 4th round is Logan Webb, Aaron Nola, Tarek Skubal.
Yeah,
Framber
those are
Valdez,
still
Max Fried.
basically aces.
I think they're fine options. Yeah.
So
I'd like them all a lot more as my number 2 personally.
Yeah, of course, in a perfect world. But I think the hitter drop off is for sure going to have happened by the time it gets back to you in round 4. And with pitcher, there's a chance it doesn't. And I understand you already have 2 hitters, so maybe you don't want to risk it that much. You just want to get yourself an ace and not have to stress so much about what's there, or maybe give yourself a chance of taking a second pitcher in round 4. I can understand that, but me personally, like if Lindor, I already took him in round 2, and Albies is still there, or Semien is still there, and I can get an elite second baseman and have one of the clear advantages at that position, I think I still do it and trust that a pitcher, or maybe even 2 that I really like, is still going to be there at the round 4 or 5 turn. Easier to say in a 12-team league, harder to say in a 15-team league, but in a 12-team league, yeah, I think I'd be more likely to do that, because we're not at the point where we've had that drop off at hitter and there's no longer any MVP caliber bats left. There's still about half a round of that, and so picking in the first half of round 3 gives you an advantage that picking in the back half of round 3 people don't have.
You know what I really want to try? I haven't gotten the first pick yet, I don't think, in any of our drafts. I would love to try an Acuna, Alonso, Vlad Jr. combo. That sounds really interesting to me, because I'm making up for Alonso's batting average with hopefully Vlad, definitely Acuna, but I do think we'll get a very strong batting average from Vlad. And you are so set in home runs, runs, and RBI with that trio that you can just kind of.
Are you with Vlad?
Kind of pass it. Yeah, I think so.
I mean, in terms of upside, yes, but he had a combined. I know it. Just because it happened last year doesn't necessarily mean it'll happen again. But he had a combined 172 runs in RBI last year without missing time.
Yeah, that's not great. He had 187.
It's not great. That's bad for an early rounder.
He had 187 the year before. Still, he had 234 the year before.
The amazing season where he was the top player in fantasy. Yeah,
but the most recent season isn't the only one. I would expect 190.
190 versus like Marcus Semien.
I would guess he was probably around 190 last year.
Marcus Semien was 222.
Whew. I forgot how ridiculous that Rangers lineup was.
And it might even be more ridiculous.
Yeah,
184 the year before.
I think I mostly agree, Scott, with your premise of taking 3 hitters if you have an early round pick, a top 4 pick, because the hitters that I've noticed at the end of the 4th and early 5th, they're not as good as the pitchers. I just always like the pitchers more in that range. So I have liked starting my team hitter, and then maybe taking 2 pitchers right after that in rounds 4 and 5.
Yep.
Out the team from there. Let's talk about a top 4 pick in a head-to-head points league. Scott has it Acuna, Betts, Freeman, Judge, his top 4 picks. Scott, are you going to leave Judge top 4, knowing what we know now?
I think I got to move Soto ahead of him.
Okay.
I've been tempted to do that all along. And I think in points leagues, especially with the walk to strikeout ratio for Soto. Yeah, I think I need to do that.
And I'm making a similar move with Judge moving down and Freeman moving up on mine.
Okay, so the top 4 in some order: Acuna, Betts, Freeman, Judge. If you have a top 4 pick in a head-to-head points league, the top available in the second round.
Soto. Let's say Soto.
Soto ahead of Judge now.
Yeah.
Picks 21 to 24. This is now using CBS head-to-head points ADP. If you do go on the website, CBS has ADP broken down by Roto and head-to-head points. So if you want to compare and contrast based on what type of league format you play in, you can do that. Zach Wheeler, Francisco Lindor, Corbin Burns, Austin Riley, Jose Altuve, Rafael Devers, Marcus Semien, Luis Castillo, Ozzie Albies. Those are some of the top names available at the end of the second. Who would you guys be looking at in a head-to-head points league?
If Burns is there, I'm definitely taking him, regardless of what spot I'm picking from. I'm definitely taking Burns. I thought he was closer to Cole than he was to the number 4 pitcher before Cole's injury. Now I think he's the clear number 2. So if he's there, I'm definitely taking him. Otherwise, I think I'm focusing on hitters.
Yeah, I think I'd take a hitter anyway. I actually think it's less important to get a standout ace in a points league than a Roto league. And I know that goes against conventional wisdom. Head-to-head points is considered like the pitching format, but the scoring format is so much more forgiving for mediocre pitching, and particularly in the age of the glob. Like globby pitchers can be pretty valuable in head-to-head points league. I mean, they have a blow-up start. You don't carry that around with you forever. It's over and done after a week, and you can mitigate with volume, 2-start weeks and such. So I am more interested. You're dealing with a smaller lineup in head-to-head point leagues too, so you need to get a clearer advantage at each spot. And so I'm even more motivated to keep drafting hitters until we're out of those MVP caliber bats, usually at some point in round 3. And so late in round 2, I definitely do that. I probably would not take Riley or Devers, though. I'd be more likely to take a second baseman, Lindor maybe, or a second baseman like Semien or Altuve, because I think this format is especially bad for Riley and Devers, who don't have the greatest plate discipline. And it pulls up somebody like Bregman, who I would imagine is going at the 4-5 turn a lot of times. Like I think in this scoring format points leagues, Bregman is on equal footing with Riley and Devers. And so I'd rather have him a couple rounds later, if that's possible.
Bregman's ADP in head-to-head points, by the way, on CBS is 38.1. So
as it should be.
It's an early 4th round pick. So
yeah,
he could make it to you, but yeah, it's not on average.
He went almost at the end of the 7th round in the Roto draft I went to. And I know Roto's his weaker format, but I was really hoping he would make it back to me. The only thing I'd point out about Burns, because I agree, pitching can get overrated in head-to-head points leagues. Over the last 3 seasons, he's averaging 519 points per season. That's better than all but 11 hitters right now. And I do think Burns is probably going to have his best season. So that's the only reason why, for me, I give him the edge. It's not a pitching is valued more in this format thing. It's specifically I think Corbin Burns is going to have an awesome season.
In the early 3rd round, picks 25 to 28, a lot of the same names: Altuve, Devers, Semien, Luis Castillo, Yamamoto. Framber Valdez gets elevated in a points league. There's Ozzie Albies. Kevin Gausman has fallen down a little bit. And then the hitters you get into like Trout, Vlad, Bregman. That might be more like the mid to late 3rd round. But Scott, it sounds like you're looking to grab hitters. Chris, if you did
Yeah.
take a hitter with your first round
We're-
pick and then Corbin Burns,
Go ahead. Sorry.
if you go hitter Corbin Burns, which of these hitters would you be looking at in the third round of 8 points league?
Gosh, I would think Semien.
Yeah, I
Given
think
how good his counting stats are, I just, he's the number 4 hitter in this format over the past 3 seasons. So I think I would go Semien if he's there.
I wanted to ask, what is Corey Seager's ADP in this format on CBS? Because I had him as a top 5 pick in head-to-head points leagues overall until the injury.
18.
I mean, if you could get him at the 2-3 turn, I think I like that even more than Lindor, just because he's so well suited for this format. And I understand he might miss the first couple weeks of the season, but I think it's worth it.
All right, let's move into the middle part of the first round. If you are drafting picks 5 through 8 in a Roto or a categories league, we will quickly run through each of your top 8 in this format. And for you, Scott, it's Acuna, Witt, Julio, Carroll. We mentioned that before. And then Betts, Freeman, Kyle Tucker, and Fernando Tatis. So that is your top 8 in a categories league. Chris, for you, it's Acuna, Julio, Witt, and Carroll. And then Tatis, Betts, Freeman, and Tucker. We do know that you are a little bit higher on Fernando Tatis. You have him 5th overall in that format. A mid-second round, you're looking at picks 17 through 20, the best available according to Fantasy Pros ADP. Yordan Alvarez, Bryce Harper, Corbin Burns, Rafael Devers, Austin Riley, Ozzie Albies, Francisco Lindor. Do you guys think about specific pairings when, like, after you get outside of the top 4 guys, like, there are different kind of skill sets that you could target in the first round? Do you think about specific pairings, maybe doing, I don't know, like Yordan Alvarez with someone who steals bases like Fernando Tatis? Is that something you like consciously think about, or not really?
Yeah, I mean, I think the good thing is all of these guys should steal some bases. Betts and Freeman are probably on the lower end of that. You're probably looking at a ceiling of 20 for both of them, maybe more realistically thinking about 15. So it's harder to group them with a Yordan Alvarez or a Bryce Harper in the second round or Rafael Devers, just because you're not going to get any steals from those guys, or not very many. And so that does start to put pressure on you to find steals later in drafts. And you have to start making sacrifices. So if you take Betts and Freeman in particular, I think you have to be a little more cognizant of who you take in the next couple of rounds. But I think Tatis is right there with Julio, Witt, and Carroll. So if I get him, I'm not really changing my approach. And Tucker's not far off. I mean, he's probably going to be 30-30 this year, maybe 35-35 with the move up in the lineup. So I think if you get Tatis or Tucker, you don't really have to change your approach too much relative to the top 4. Scott does not agree.
No. I'm just trying to,
and he's making sure the people listening know it as well as the people watching.
Figure out. I am making faces because I'm thinking. So what? I don't know. I don't know that I'm that concerned with balancing out my categories with the first 2 picks. I mean, it's great if it turns out that way, but I think I just want as much production as I could possibly get. And if it happens to be at a weak position, even better. It would be hard to address the weakness of the position in round 2 because there's not an outfielder we're taking in this range. So I'm just mostly looking at the most production I could get. Where's the list of hitters we're considering in round 2 of the?
It's Yordan Alvarez, Bryce Harper, Devers, Riley, Albies, Lindor.
So we're assuming Olsen's already gone.
Yep.
Probably between Alvarez and Harper. And I might lean Harper at this point because I've kind of gotten scared away of Alvarez with the injury history for not feeling like I can't afford to sacrifice anything in runs and RBI in the early rounds. I think those would be my top priorities. And then you get back into Francisco Lindor and Ozzy Albies in the 2 third baseman after that, which we already covered in the previous group.
In the middle of the third round, picks 29 through 32, the best available: Gausman, Castillo, Kevin Gausman, Luis Castillo, Gunnar Henderson, Jose Altuve, Ellie De La Cruz, Zach Gallen, Michael Harris, who's been moving up draft boards, Yamamoto, Luis Robert. So really all these hitters provide a little bit of everything. It sounds like we were going to start hitter regardless. Do you look to jump in on a pitcher here, or do you continue to just rack up the hitters?
So I've talked about the MVP caliber bats and when the drop off happens. It's about here. I still consider Altuve to be part of that MVP caliber hitter group. He's among the last to be drafted. So if he's there, I'm probably taking him. I mean, assuming I didn't get Albies or something in round 2. And I might consider Ellie De La Cruz, and I might consider Michael Harris over a pitcher. I'd consider it. It would be a close call. Ellie De La Cruz, especially if I had done something like pair Mookie Betts with Yordan Alvarez or whatever, hadn't gotten many steals yet, and I was looking for, I can maybe get 60 from Ellie De La Cruz before you even consider his hitting upside. I haven't had occasion to draft Ellie De La Cruz yet, but not because I'm not open to it. It's just somebody tends to pull him into round 2 or something like that.
You know what sounds fun on paper, and you kind of get just a little bit of everything? Freeman, Lindor, Michael Harris. You get a little bit of everything. You get an outfielder. Batting average should be really good. You're getting, I think, a decent amount of power and speed from each of those guys.
I'm just not sure Harris is going to make it that far anymore.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like he went 28th in the draft I did tonight, and I kind of think that's where he's going to start living.
I think I'd be most likely to consider him if I didn't have an outfielder yet, meaning I didn't draft an outfielder in round 1 because there's not one we're taking in round 2. And it's just so important for me to start building up that position, especially in a 5 outfielder league like Roto. I still have RBI and run concerns, but less with the likelihood of him batting 6th than 9th.
But it does, with Harris, kind of feels like he could be anything. He could even be Jose Altuve. You know, like you could just take the guy who's already in that prime lineup spot, who already has the home run and stolen bases, and that I guess Harris will probably drive in more runs, but
I really can't see myself taking Harris if Altuve. I can't see myself taking any of these players if Altuve is there.
All right, let's talk about picks 5 through 8 from a head-to-head points league perspective, and Scott's top 8 in this format: Acuna, Betts, Freeman. We mentioned Judge is going to come down a little bit, but Soto, Tucker, Corbin Carroll, and Matt Olson. Chris's top 8 in head-to-head points: Acuna, Betts, Soto, Judge, Freeman, Carroll, Tatis, and Spencer Strider. This is the first time we've heard Spencer Strider's name yet. Have you actually done it, Chris? Have you taken Spencer Strider as like a, in that anywhere from, 7 to 10 range in a draft yet?
Not in a points league, but we did a Roto league, I think 2 weeks ago, where I did take
pocket aces.
I took pocket aces. Yeah. So that, don't feel great about the Gerrit Cole side of that, but yes, I would take Spencer Strider in the 10-ish range.
All right. So in the middle of the second round, pick 17 through 20, outside of Strider, it sounds like you likely wound up with a hitter with your first round pick. Best available, according to CBS head-to-head points ADP, Bryce Harper, Tatis. Tatis goes low in these points leagues, man.
Which doesn't, he's not as good in points leagues, but he should still be really, really good in points leagues.
Same thing with Trey Turner. He falls down a little bit, but I think as a mid-second round pick, totally fine. Pete Alonso, Zach Wheeler, Francisco Lindor, Corbin Burns. Is there a specific hitter or two you would like to target in the middle of the second round?
I mean, Harper, if he's there, seems like a slam dunk as much as he walks. And honestly, if I had taken, because I ranked Matt Olson in this range for round 1, I think in a points league, if I take Olson with pick 8 and Harper's there with my next pick, I think I still do it just because they're both so well suited for the format. But if Harper isn't there
goes your utility spot, though.
Yeah, I mean, that's fine. And it's such a shallow league that I'm not confident any of the DH only guys are going to be somebody who's going to set me apart. Not nearly as confident as having Harper and Olson to start out my team. So I understand it's not ideal, but in the unlikely scenario that happens, I'd be willing to do it. If Harper's gone, then Tatis, Turner, Alonso. I'd probably go Lindor over Alonso, but basically just how you've listed them here. I'm not thinking about positions so much, just how upsidey the hitter is.
All right, in the middle of the third round, you're looking at picks 29 through 32. Best available: Yamamoto, Framber Valdez, Ozzie Albies, Kevin Gausman, Zach Gallen, Mike Trout, Cody Bellinger, Vlad Jr., Alex Bregman. So we're kind of at that cutoff, Scott, the MVP caliber hitters. Albies loses a little bit of value in a head-to-head points league. Is this where you start to maybe pivot to a pitcher if these are the best hitters available? Or do you go with an Alex Bregman, who's really good in this format?
Yeah, I think I still keep taking hitters because Bregman, like I said, in this format, he's as good as Austin Riley and Rafael Devers. So I'd rather do that before taking my first pitcher. I'd still take Albies if I haven't filled second base yet. Would I take Trout? No. Would I take Bellinger? No. Would I take Vlad Jr.? Probably not. I'd probably take a pitcher over him.
I will say I'm not taking Yamamoto here. I actually think a head-to-head points league is his worst format because he's likelier than most pitchers to pitch every sixth day instead of every fifth day. I would imagine they're going to find time for him to get that. That's going to mean fewer two-start weeks. I think volume is going to be a problem for him. That matters less in a Roto league where his ratios might be elite, but in a points league, I think it's a significant detriment.
Yeah, his CBS head-to-head points ADP Yamamoto is 31.7.
Yeah.
So he's been going like mid-third round. It might be a little bit early there, as you pointed out. What if you pick in the final third of the first round, picks 9 through 12? And again, we'll start with Roto categories format and Scott's 7 through 12 in his Roto rankings. Kyle Tucker, Fernando Tatis, Trey Turner, Aaron Judge, Spencer Strider, Juan Soto. So if any of those players fall to you in the late first round, obviously, take whoever's ranked the highest.
Yeah, I'm probably dropping Judge behind Soto there too. I need to make that adjustment.
Yep. And then Chris's 7 through 12 in this format is Freeman, Tucker, Strider. Again, Judge probably going to drop a little bit. And then Soto and Trey Turner. Again, point out that you have Fernando Tatis ranked 5th in the categories. And I think there's going to be lots of drafts where he falls to the late first round. So if you want to follow Chris's rankings, then
like my decision tree is very simple. Are Ronald Acuna, Bobby Witt, Julio Rodriguez, or Corbin Carroll available? Yes, take them. No, take Fernando Tatis.
Okay. What about Strider? Like, when do you guys actually consider taking Strider in a categories league?
What do I have him? Ninth. I guess it's possible. Like, Tatis is there and I don't take him there, but 9th or 10th.
Yeah. Gosh, I've never been faced with the possibility. Somebody seems to like, a lot of times he gets dragged up to like 4th to Strider in categories leagues. I guess where I rank him is where I'd consider taking him, which in my case is 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th after I move Judge down.
Okay. What about in the early second round? So picks 13 through 16, best available according to Fantasy Pros ADP: Shohei Ohtani, Gerrit Cole, Matt Olson, Jose Ramirez, Trey Turner, Yordan Alvarez, Bryce Harper, Corbin Burns. Scott, you've talked all offseason about, 16 first round caliber bats.
I believe we're at 16 now. Yes, 16. With the loss of Seager.
So you could still get a lot of those in the early second round, and you can just start your team hitter.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I usually do. Now, if it's a 15-teamer, as I did in Tout Wars, I'm a little more open to taking a pitcher. The Gerrit Cole situation kind of blows up that idea. But, maybe if Spencer Strider's there at 10, like I said, I'd take him. And I'd be more likely to do it in a 15-teamer is what I'm saying, because of how quickly the high-end pitcher class depletes and how much harder it is to get 4 of my top 30. But otherwise, and Strider's the only pitcher. If we're assuming Gerrit Cole is out, Strider's the only pitcher I'd consider here. So, and if he's not possible, then absolutely I'm going hitter. What I'm doing with the last 4 picks in round 1, a very common combination for me is Matt Olson is almost always a part of it, usually with the second pick. And then, one of those 7 through 12 guys like Trey Turner and Matt Olson, I think, makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
I'd be fine with Juan Soto and Matt Olson, even though there's no steals there. There's a great run in RBI production.
Mhm.
You should be set for home runs. You should be pretty good in shape with batting average. You should have everything but steals well covered. And you've got an outfielder already, which I think is a high priority in the first. To the degree you could help it, it's great to get an outfielder in round one.
Chris, I was going to ask about Trey Turner. If you take him as a late first round pick in a Roto league, do you maybe put an emphasis on taking Matt Olson or Yordan Alvarez or Bryce Harper just to get that kind of power balance with a Trey Turner? Or would you just take, Ohtani, who's going to give you power and speed, or Jose Ramirez, whoever?
Yeah, I mean, that Ohtani might hit more home runs than any of those guys. So
Yeah,
an Ohtani Turner pairing sounds really nice. Jose Ramirez is going to hit 30 home runs. I think we're going to get a bounce back in terms of the run production. I think last year it was 180 something. I just wrote this down. I should have this off the top of my head. 167 runs plus RBI last season. He averaged 214 between 2021 and 2022. I expect significant bounce back for Jose Ramirez, so I'm fine taking him there as well. I think Turner pairs well with everyone, really.
Olson, Ohtani, Ramirez. How do you rank them? I just gave my ranking. Olson, Ohtani, Ramirez.
Ohtani, Ramirez, Olson.
I think I have the same ranking. And I have Harper ahead of Olson too, but I think I'm on an island there. So
yeah, I've got Harper behind Olson and Corbin Burns.
The late third round options, picks 33 through 36. Best available: Elly De La Cruz, Zach Gallen, Michael Harris, probably not Michael Harris anymore, Yamamoto, Luis Robert, Pablo Lopez, Adley Rutschman, Bo Bichette, Randy Arozarena. So it sounded like no matter, I guess there is a scenario where you start with Spencer Strider, but let's assume that you start hitter. Is this the point where, again, you might be looking at double tap pitcher, maybe take a Zach Gallen and a Tarek Skubal or whoever it might be?
Most of the hitters listed here are beyond the MVP caliber threshold for me. So this is probably where I'm looking to take my first pitcher late in round 3. If Elly De La Cruz is there,
yes,
I probably take him.
Yes, but he's never there.
And not in our drafts. If Michael Harris is there, but we're saying that's not likely either. So I would definitely take a Yamamoto or a Pablo Lopez over a Luis Robert or a Bo Bichette, Randy Arozarena. I'd take a pitcher over them. And I might go back-to-back pitchers depending on what pitchers we're talking about on the way back in round 4.
Yeah, I prefer Pablo, Gallen, Yamamoto in the 4th round. But I'm happy to take them, early in the 4th round, late in the 3rd maybe, but I'd prefer not to.
One name I haven't mentioned, CJ Abrams. If you start your team with 2 of Alvarez, Juan Soto, Matt Olson, Bryce Harper, Judge, do you make it an emphasis to get Abrams at the end of the 3rd or early 4th round?
I've done it before, and I think I regretted it in the aftermath, given what my pitching staff looks like. I think I wished I had taken a pitcher there instead. So I'd probably take it kind of depends how many pitchers are left, and you can count out, okay, what pitcher is the standard of ace I'm going to get on the way back in round 4 worth it to take the steals with CJ Abrams. But I would lean toward taking the pitcher over Abrams, even if I'm behind in stolen bases at that point.
Let's quickly wrap up with picks 9 through 12 in a head-to-head points league, and Scott's back end of the first round in this format: Corbin Carroll, Matt Olson, Bobby Witt, Julio Rodriguez, Jose Ramirez, and Fernando Tatis. Chris's picks 7 through 12 in a points league: Tatis, Strider, Jose Ramirez, Yordan Alvarez, Julio Rodriguez, and Kyle Tucker.
You see that? I don't even have Strider as a first rounder in a points league.
You're crazy, man.
Wow. I'm a crazy man.
People might be wondering, do Bobby Witt and Julio really lose that much value in a head-to-head points league? Based on the CBS scoring format, they do. Each of them averaged 3.6 fantasy points per game last year. That was less than Kyle Tucker, Judge, Bellinger, Corbin Carroll, Jose Altuve, Alvarez, Seager, Freeman, Olson, Betts, Ohtani, Acuna. They're still really good, and they're late first, early second rounders. But Julio and Bobby Witt do lose a little bit of value in a head-to-head points league. The best available in the second round, based on CBS head-to-head points ADP, Jose Ramirez, Kyle Tucker, Alvarez, Seager, Harper, Tatis, Turner, Wheeler, Burns. These are all names that we've talked about. Do you take any of those pitchers over those hitters? Or do you just
Nope.
You just go hitter to start, right?
I go hitter.
Yeah. Yep. And then the late third round options, picks 33 through 36. Kevin Gausman, Zach Gallen, Mike Trout, Bellinger, Vlad Jr., Glasnow, Bregman, really good in that format again. Machado, Logan Webb.
Machado shouldn't be here.
Luis Robert, Gunnar Henderson.
Like it's too early for Machado?
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Bregman, I'd probably have to take Bregman if he was there, provided I didn't have a third baseman already through rounds 1 and 2. But otherwise, I'm taking a pitcher in round 3 after going hitter. Just don't like the hitters that are left here late in round 3 as much.
This is where the pitchers catch up, I think.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap there. For Scott and Chris, I am Frank. Thanks as always for tuning in to Fantasy Baseball today. Please make sure to follow and leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. And we'll be back again tomorrow. Bye-bye.